Shirt show. All right, let's go.
Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Shirt, man! All right! Episode 73 of Shirt Show. We've got a handful of hungover printers recapping the events of Print Hustlers. Let's go!
Hey, baby cakes.
Hey, sleepyhead.
Hey.
Instead of sleepyhead, maybe more like fuckface.
Or fuckhead?
Fuckhead. Yeah, there you go. What? What? That's all I have to say is what?
You don't like it?
It's you.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Here at Upstate, how we communicate is we, instead of high fives and waves, we just middle finger each other as we walk by each other. So I 1000% bought this when I was looking for a Halloween costume, just so I can walk by Chris's office with it on once.
Well, I think it'd be perfect if you put a piece of tape over the mouth part.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like nightmare fuel a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, we're going to do the whole show like this? I hope so.
No. It's kind of, it's very, there's no spot for the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Hey there.
Hey.
Hey.
Check.
Check 1, 2. Oh, yeah. Good.
Working. Look what I got on.
Ooh, look at that sexy tee.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
I know Alex said not to read that, but it's getting read right now. EasyWay's line of eco-friendly chemicals will get the job done faster, more efficiently, and will cost you a fraction of the cost per
screen.
EasyWay.
It's the easiest fucking way.
Yeah. And Alex, he wrote that, which is a really good.
Yeah. He specifically wrote that.
Yeah. He said he loves it and it took him a long time and we should not mess with it.
He said, please don't deviate from that statement.
Right.
Oh, look at you.
It was, let's just say, still recovering.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't nap ever. And I've napped more this weekend than I've napped.
Well, you've been hanging out with me too much, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
This still smells a little bit like Oklahoma. And you know what else still smells?
You know what else smells?
Do you know what else still smells a little bit like Oklahoma?
Our lips.
Our lips. That'll be our little secret, though.
Hell of a weekend. Bring it on home, buddy.
Yeah. So if you don't know by now, you fucking suck. But
yeah.
GSF, graphic screen fashion, they make screens.
The best fucking screens in the world for screen printing. Hands down. If you're not buying Frank's screens, fuck you. Do the right thing.
And we decided this weekend that all of the other ways to get to Frank are going away. In fact, it's not going to be called GSF anymore. It's just going to be called greatfuckingscreens.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's going to be the sign on his building.
We told Frank, sorry, bud. We have a pretty good pull on this. Your new company name is greatfuckingscreens.com.
That's right. Next, we have Action Engineering. They make accessories printers need.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Squeegees, flood bars, pallets, and everything else.
Speaking of
pallet rubber.
Speaking of, I just got some.
Oh,
Look how beautiful this is. And this right here is the 629060. And this is how we print white at Shirt Kong.
It's so beautiful. Look at that pre-cut rounded corners.
That's what I'm saying. You know how we talked about that, about the pre-cut thing? And did you see that corner right there? It's coming up. Ooh, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
So You know how I bought that is I went to actionengineering.com. I went, put that in the cart. I went to checkout and I put shirt show.
And you got 15% off.
That's right.
Well worth it.
Monarch.
Great ink.
Ink better. Print better. Be better.
Monarch.
Monarch.
Live Moss. Monarch.
Ah, fuck yeah. How did we mess that up? Well, I bet
both
you
really sleepy.
I bet you it's because we're going on the least amount of sleep I've had since college.
I literally woke up from a nap 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, guess what, Dylan? Do you know where my room was? Do you know what floor it was on? Do you remember?
3? 2?
Come on. 2.
2?
It's on 2. And so when your room is on floor number 2, that's close to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what window, when I looked out my window, I was on a corner. And when I looked out one of my windows, I looked out to the entrance and exit to the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what happens when the upstairs bar closes at 2 a.m.?
Everybody fucking floods out. And you hear
Everybody.
Some awesome conversation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I might have heard your voice last night.
I was, where was I? Oh, my room is on the 5th floor. And all I heard all night long, every night was because of the fucking nightclub a floor above me.
I know. Exactly. I heard that too. And then I don't know why, but like, I feel like we got pretty rowdy on Friday night and we probably kept some people up, but still it wasn't anywhere near whatever was happening last night. So, yeah, not a lot of sleep. What was I going to say? This is what I was going to say. I think this is going to be the last of, well, I don't know. We're recording next weekend and it's the day before Halloween and we'll probably feel in the spirit, we still have to do
we have
another.
one more. Yeah, we have one more dad joke to get in there.
All right. So what's a ghost's nose full of?
Boogers.
You knew that one. I feel like you knew that one. You tell that one a lot.
They're all boo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what'd you do this weekend?
Oh, God. Well, let's see. The week before the weekend was nothing but printing every single day, trying to keep up on press. And then I finished the day off strong on Wednesday and I woke up Thursday morning I went to bed at midnight. I woke up at 3 a.m. I drove to Syracuse, an hour away, got on an airplane, flew to Chicago.
Okay. And hitting timeout like this. I feel like this is one of my stories. I think here's what's happening. You're turning more into me and I'm turning more into you.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Because I need a break and you need some life.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I hope it is too. Because I could use a little bit of life. And look, dude, it ain't easy. It ain't easy being me. Mm-hmm. So come on, let's trade. That would be so fun, actually, to trade for a week, let's just say, and then I'm Dylan and you're Andy.
Going to bed at 7:30, eating gourmet pizzas for dinner.
That's a good life.
Going on a nice walk with the cicadas and the mosquitoes.
One more thing.
Joanne?
Yeah. See?
It's worth it.
Yeah. So Thursday, I drove straight to Frank's, took some pics of his shop. Something like that. There's some traffic. I thought it was going to be 4, but then Chicago. I loved one time we were going to Uber to I don't know where the fuck we were going to Uber to, but it said Uber ride 47 minutes, and then it said walking 14 minutes. That's Chicago.
It's so disgusting.
But yeah, I drove to Frank's, and then this was like I just drove straight to Frank's before the hotel, before anything about Print Hustlers.
Yeah.
And then, do you know who Mr. M&R is? Do you know who the people refer to as Mr. M&R?
Mr. M&R?
Yeah, you know who that is?
No.
Well, I picked him up on Thursday, and he got in my car, and what happened was a 45-minute roast as I was driving to the city.
You're welcome. Because you know what I remember about that situation is smiles and laughter for 45 minutes.
It was good stuff. But it was basically the roast of Andy Rudman, and we should have aired it because, well, it would have been, it was good for some laughs. But then you know what we did? Huh?
It's what I'm here for.
That's true. That's one of the reasons. There's a lot.
They come to me so easily when I'm with you.
Well, so we went, checked in the hotel, and then we went to, I think it was called Parlor. Do I have that right?
Dude,
it was a pizza place.
Oh yeah. For the meetup.
There was a meetup, like a shop meetup, and we went, and we were the last ones there. 0 chairs.
Yeah.
Left.
Yep.
0 spots.
And then I pulled a random table over to add to the table, which was like a reserve table.
You got in trouble.
Then I walked to the other side of that table and grabbed another table and brought it over. And then the waiter kept coming over and like moving them back. But it was insanely loud in there.
It was insanely loud. Like if we were standing next to each other, I would be yelling in your ear.
We were yelling.
Mm-hmm.
But some real passionate moments happened in that room.
They were special, dear to my heart. Mm-hmm. And we tried to we tried to record it. We tried to get it on video, and we got messed up. But you know what? We just lived the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We lived the moment.
Mm-hmm. So there was a passionate smooch.
Let's not talk. I don't think we should talk. I really don't think we should talk about this.
We can't not bring it up.
I think we already did.
We know what's happening, but nobody else knows what's going on.
JL, you know. JL knows too.
JL knows.
Okay, so and then we went. That's what we did. We went and got quesadillas.
Mm-hmm.
They were delicious.
We went and got quesadillas with the most sour cream I've ever had, ever.
Okay, yeah. So here, let's just paint this picture. Really fancy restaurant, extremely good.
Yeah, it was very good.
Bring us the quesadillas, and all we asked for is like, look, can we have a little sour cream?
Because they were big quesadillas too. They were like meaty quesadillas.
They were. Mm-hmm. And they brought out this little tiny thimble like this. And it was a little tiny squirt.
Yeah. And we described it later in the car of it being the amount of toothpaste you would put on your toothbrush.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. Because we described it 2 ways. But yeah, that's one.
Yeah, I didn't want that. That's a little.
Yeah. So like if you were to put toothpaste on your toothbrush.
That's how much sour cream they gave us in these thimbles.
Yeah. It was really good sour cream though.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably homemade, farm to table.
Yeah, Outback.
Yeah, and then you know what we did? We went to we ran into Nick Wood there and his gang.
Yeah. We
went up to the rooftop. I think we had just maybe one more drink, and we were responsible. We said, let's go to bed. And we somehow convinced Mimosa to do the same thing. And he's like, yeah, good decision. Yeah, let's go down. We've got a big day, big weekend. Let's call it a night.
Mm-hmm.
And we were responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we were the exact opposite the next night.
Oh, yeah. So what you forgot to mention was the fact of, like I said, I woke up at 3. I flew to Chicago. I immediately got an Uber, went to M&R for 5 hours with a bunch of buddies, some shops that have never been to M&R. We did the tour, checked out machinery, just hung out, had a good time. And then Andy picks me up, and then we did everything we just talked about. But I was on 2-3 hours of sleep. And all day felt like that thing where like at noon, it felt like it was 5 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, it felt like it was like 11 p.m. So here we are at this rooftop bar and we're all like, man, I'm so tired. We should call it a night. And it was like 9:30.
Right. I was the same way. It was like, we had gotten up. I had gotten hardly any sleep the night before. Like you said, crammed the weekend. And we drove to Chicago, got up early, drove to Chicago, and I felt the same way. It was, I was exhausted, but
it was nice to go to bed somewhat early on Thursday and be fully recharged for the start of Print Hustlers in the morning. We had a very good day of speakers.
Yeah. So I thought, you and I thought we would have a special guest to kind of help us recap this because, well, for one, I can't remember. My memory's going anyway, but I can't remember half of it because of, what we were talking about. So
we got
Matt.
One of the highlights of that trip for me was last night we went to dinner with Matt and you were recapping what happened Friday night. And it was a lot different from what actually happened.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. I know the story. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah. Where are you, in a prison?
I know.
I can't hear anything.
We can hear you totally fine.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. Are your headphones plugged in? That's the first thing I always check because they're in your ears, but
Matt does this for a living.
Second. Let me check something.
The next thing I would do is go down to that mute in the bottom left.
I got it.
Can you hear us?
I can.
Oh, where are you?
I'm floating in a white room.
I know it's super echoey. You look like you're in a prison.
I am, of my own emotions. I'm in my basement right now.
Okay.
All right, boys. Well, listen, before we get started, I have a question. And my question is this.
Who am I?
Now, that is a good question too. But
Matt right now is what I would imagine is what happens when you die. And he's the first person to ask you a question because he sounds like the Lord right now. Very echoey white room.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to heaven.
And he's got this deep voice and all this reverb going on. No, my question is this. Did you have anything to do with this bullshit?
I had nothing to do with that. That's the first time I've seen that.
So
it's not the first time.
I'm sure show number one.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Let's be honest here. I had nothing to do with it, but I support what has been done to you. I mean, I gotta be honest with you.
Well, for those who aren't watching and who are listening, when we got there, we received some jerseys, and Dylan's jersey says Shirt Show number 1, and mine says Shirt Show number 2. And I have a feeling it's more of Campus Inc.'s doing. Our good buddy Steven.
I mean, you guys are kind of thing 1 and thing 2. You come on, you know this.
I don't know if you remember this either, Andy, but at one point on Friday, you kept chanting, "I'm number 2."
Is that before or after he apparently jumped on someone's back that he later tried flipping that story?
That's what we were just talking about before you came on. Is it was hilarious because Andy's like, I can't believe I had to give someone a piggyback ride. And I was like, wait. That's not what happened. You jumped on another man's back and then made him eat shit immediately after.
I remembered somebody jumping on my back and then we fell and I saved us. I saved both of our lives.
1000% not how it happened.
That's how it went in your drunken mind. That's amazing.
I'm totally sober walking along with this other man and Andy runs and jumps up on his back. And then he takes 2 steps forward and then just collapses. And I'm watching this happen thinking Andy's face is going to smash off of the sidewalk. And luckily it didn't. And here you're like, oh, I saved this dude's life.
Well, we all believe what we want to believe, I guess.
That's exactly it. Yep.
The reason why you jumped on this guy's back is because Joanne was on my back. I was giving her a piggyback ride, and you're like, well, if Joanne's getting one, I'm getting one.
What was
I
the
got
stature of the man that Andy jumped on? Was it like a littler than Andy man? Or
No,
was it
he was bigger.
He should have been able to hold an Andy.
But it was unexpected.
A petite fella. Fair enough. Just
I've been hitting
no
the
warning.
now.
Just
no
violent
warning,
violent back. Yeah, that's not really fair. That's like a sucker punch.
It was good. It's in my mind forever.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Chicago. How was the blue line, by the way, yesterday? Last I saw you, I put you on public transportation.
Yeah. So Matt takes me and Amy to the blue line, and he's like, yeah, this side is you. You're 2 stops away. Just go here. And I'm like, or me and Amy are like, uh-huh. And we get on the blue line, and it stops at the first place. And we're like, well, all right, this is stop number 1. And then we get to the next one. And the second one was Chicago. And we couldn't remember what the third one you said we should go to is.
Grand. I said to get off at Grand.
I know. Well, we figured that out. We ended up getting to Grand, and then we get off, and Amy pulls up maps on her phone, and I'm trying to show her how maps work, because apparently she doesn't know anything about geography. Like we learned that she didn't know that we were on a lake.
I didn't want to throw her out. I wasn't going to do that yet. On the Arctic shore, I was like, oh yeah, we got the lake. She's like, oh, what lake? I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, what lake? I'm like, just one of the biggest, Lake Michigan. She's like, really? I'm like, oh boy, yep. I love you, Amy. Didn't mean to call you out there, so but much. Yeah.
So anyway, the reason why I say this is that she pulled the maps out, and we were trying to, and to her credit, when you're in Chicago and there's like lanes above you and trains and everything, the maps kind of freaks out and doesn't really know where you are all the time.
Yep.
So we're walking, trying to figure out how to get back to the Ace. Well, she has a separate hotel, and we're walking, and we finally get almost there. And she's like, okay, hey, I think like I'm this way and you're this way. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, we hug it out and say, I'll see you later. Make it home safe or whatever. So I start walking the other direction. Like I can almost see the Ace. Like I know where I'm going. And I'm like, I look at my phone, I'm checking my messages. I'm like, I finally turn the maps on, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden she fucking comes like right up behind me and is like, hey, I was going the wrong way. Like I literally felt my heart jump out of my chest, because here I am in a dark alley trying to make it back. And she just fucking comes out of nowhere. And she's like, yeah, I took the wrong way. And I was just like, oh, like I thought I was going to die on the side of the street.
In one of the safest neighborhoods in Chicago.
Yeah, very, very, very
next
safe.
to the Google campus. So many nerds would have like jumped out of the bushes asking you to sign up for their software. That's about the only thing you've got to be worried about there.
Yeah.
That's still one of the best Uber rides of my life. That was
that was very good.
All squished butt to butt in the back seat. I
think we could say this isn't bad. We won't get into what we were talking about, but Matt said something. We got an Uber, and the guy's name was Jesus. And
I think it's Jesus, but to us, it's Jesus.
Jesus. Well, anyway, Matt says something super inappropriate. Well, and we're both saying something super inappropriate. And Amy's in between us, and we're smashed into this. It was a tiny car. I could barely get my feet in
It was
there.
a Malibu.
Right. I had to put my arm up like this because this was the only way we were fitting in this vehicle. So anyway, we say something super inappropriate in this vehicle, and Amy's like, Jesus.
Invoking our Uber driver's name.
And we awkwardly laughed.
There was like five minutes of like just like giggling under our breaths, trying to not like engage with what had just happened. It was a very mature moment, and I'm proud of it.
It was very good. Yeah.
Good times.
So anyway, let's talk about Print Hustlers.
Yes. Let's talk about Print Hustlers.
Sure. Let's do it.
Nothing.
Go ahead, Andy.
I mean, it's your show. Lead the way.
Well, one of the ones that I liked a lot of them. So it was difficult for me to like pull these takeaways out. But at dinner last night, we were talking about Kevin, and it's Baumgart, right?
Baumgart, yeah.
And so if you don't know, Kevin is he's expert on sales, and he does some like consulting on sales. And in fact, I think you guys did a podcast with him once, and it's like a couple hours long. And so if you want to hear some things he has to say, you can check out Print Hustlers podcast, or sorry, Printavo podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things Kevin talked about, that locus of control, and I mentioned it last night at dinner because I think it was a good thing, and I couldn't tie it into what Kevin was talking about, and I think maybe you will do a better job. But locus of control, I wikied it, and it is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces beyond their influence, have control over the outcome of events in their lives. A person's locus is conceptualized as eternal, a belief that one can control one's own life, or external, a belief that life is controlled by outside factors which the person cannot influence, or that chance or fate controls their lives. Individuals with a strong internal locus of control believe events in their life are primarily a result of their own actions. So I love that. And do you remember why he said that?
Yeah, so it was talking about, and yeah, Kevin is a genius and great. I know he works with Printavo a lot. I think he's worked with Steven. I've seen him talk like 3 or 4 times, and every time I'm taking notes down. So he was using it in when you're hiring a person and you hear about their previous jobs, right? And we all have these friends too, right? Yeah. You have your buddy who's like, oh, well, my last job, like the boss was this and they were that. Well, the other job, like this boss was this. It's always somebody else, right? It's never you. Fault. It's always somebody else's fault, right? So when you're hiring somebody, if they're using that kind of that verbiage, right? Well, they, them, as opposed to like we or I, and also owning some of that as well. Even if it's kind of like, oh, you know, it wasn't great for me. At least then you're still looking at it from a you perspective. So really making sure that you're not getting one of those they, thems that are constantly like, they're the problem. It's them causing it, all that. So having somebody that has a good locus of control is always a better, I think, employee to try to find. I think a better person in general to try to find to be around too. Yeah, no. Kevin was a big takeaway for me. I enjoyed sitting through that one again.
Yeah, that was a good one. I feel like most of the speakers, the one you're talking about was what, Saturday, right? But Friday was mostly in the main room, and we had all the speakers all day. And I feel like almost every speaker on Friday was like had some kind of takeaway. And for me, it was the fact that we've talked on the last couple episodes about how what all of us should be doing is we always talk about saying no, but the big thing is we should be saying no to stuff that's not in our wheelhouse or stuff that bogs down the presses and all this other stuff. And I feel like it was probably just me because it was in my mind, but like I feel like almost every person who talked on Friday said something about that, like to probably should say no a lot more to stuff that's just like fucking slowing you down or stuff.
It's funny though. You're absolutely. It was funny though, because Jacob from Jack Prince kind of then saying the exact opposite on Saturday, right? Like, and I completely agree. Like everyone on the first day, like absolutely like find your wheelhouse, do what you're good at. And then you have Jacob being like, oh, well, I've made a juggernaut of an empire out of like, saying yes to everything and figuring out what the hell I have to do. Over promising and then having to figure it out. It's one of those things where it's like, I think you have to figure out who are you, right? For most people, I think what the first day was really preaching of, hey, find your niche. Also, what Steve Albini was saying, which that was also just mind blowing. I did not expect him to come in with like a legitimate, like written down, like clearly also rehearsed, well done thing. And then the questions were so candid and awesome. But really focusing on like, hey, find your creative core, stick to it, and then don't really give a shit about anything else, right? Just like do what you want to do, how you want to do it. Eventually it'll get appreciated, and eventually you'll end up kind of getting somewhere with it. But then that same punk rock approach the next day from Jacob, like, yeah, I could only do these things, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to figure out more. So I think for some, like if you are that entrepreneurial spirit that like just likes to solve things, maybe you shouldn't say no as much. You should say yes and figure out how the heck to get it done and kind of help grow your empire a little bit, and then just kind of filter down from there. But it's I don't know, it's a hard one. I think that I agree most shops should say no a lot more. I think my shop should say no a lot more. But when you see somebody like Jacob, it's kind of like man, should I be?
Well, I feel like he was just more interested in the fact of like innovating things. Like he was very into the innovation of moving screen printing forward in his shop, other than just the basics of like, this is how I print a t-shirt. He was like, this is how you print a t-shirt, but this is how I think we could print t-shirts and be a step ahead of anybody else. Which
Also,
but he also is still like, I want to, sure, paper sounds good. Paper printers are expensive. Oh, you want to do promo? We made a catalog promo. I don't know how to do promo. It's different. It was just funny seeing that, like, that complete different. But at the core, though, I thought all of them were saying the same thing of like, be true to who you are. So if who you are is, I like to screen print, I like this scene, stay there. Right. Work in that scene. If I like to solve problems and kind of like work with everybody, and if I can't do it, figure it out, then that's your core, go there. But all of them, and seeing like the different punk rock paths that everyone, I mean, this industry is full of us idiots, right? But it's one thing to see a Ricardo who already seems super polished, or even like a Kevin who seems super polished. It's another thing to see like a Steve Albini or a Jacob who's like, here's me being an idiot doing drugs in the 80s, right? And now here's me now. You're like, dude, that's whoa, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot of the guests weren't from the industry, because they brought this perspective of maybe it was entrepreneurship or whatever they were in, whatever business or industry they were in. They brought this perspective, and what's interesting, and it all overlaps. I mean, we share a lot of the same. There's a lot of common ground, even though you come from the different industry, and so. I liked that it wasn't just, and I think that's what separates Print Hustlers from, say, a normal, like a convention, where there's a equipment and stuff, because there's a lot less like geeking out on, equipment or chemicals or inks or all that kind of stuff. And it's just a lot more focusing on how am I growing as a person, as a company, as a business, more like the business side of stuff. You know what I mean? So I think that's what's special.
I think I get the equipment scratch when I go to the trade shows. I think Print Hustlers gives me the mental scratch, right? It actually like expands what I have been thinking about, looking at other ways to see the things. And all of us are business owners of some sort and trying to get ahead in whatever industry we are in. We all have similar paths and similar stories. Just you might change a few key variables. There's plenty to learn from everybody. It's also, I think it's fun to have not just the same players playing the same game year after year,
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that there's a lot of other industries that you shouldn't just like, if you're interested in learning, especially about our screen printing industry, you shouldn't just listen to other screen printers. Like one of my favorite things is like, I listen to podcasts of dudes that are like in the construction industry or like other trades, to where you realize how fucking similar they are. They're just not printing shirts. They're doing something else. And you hear about how they're past something or how their business operates or whatever. And it's like, listen to the dude with the salsa, like how he's just like, yeah, I fucking like was supposed to show up here in Canada and I wore a Mountie outfit and everyone was like, look at this asshole in this Mountie costume. And he stole the show and a bunch of people knew who he was and recognized him and wanted to see what he was doing. And it was like, that was the whole point. It didn't have anything to do with, I don't know. He just had a little idea and it worked. Or
a Renfro example of him is the perfect example of how we have common ground, because that guy, he is a contract printer, kind of, because he makes salsa for other companies.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in his factory. In fact, I think that was one of our questions, or one of our takeaways from. We asked a question on our story and said, "Hey, what are some of your takeaways?" And Nar City says, like Renfro is a contract printer too, just like us. You know what I mean? He makes salsa instead of t-shirts.
Right. And he kept saying,
I wonder if he's making their salsa or if he's like repurposing his own. Like he's a contract printer. If he's like taking their ingredients and having to put it together, like their designs. If he's just relabeling,
I think both.
Well, he was saying that they would come to, like, people would come to him and be like, hey, I want this salsa or whatever it was. And they'd be like, I want to use fucking these like hefty ingredients or whatever. And he's like, well, if you actually want salsa that's going to go to market and we can like bottle this and use it, like you have to like lower your expectations. Like if you want, I think he made an example of like roasted tomatoes or something. He's like, if you want to do roasted tomatoes, it's going to be like $35 a jar. Or if you want to do like a quarter roasted tomatoes and then just like regular tomatoes, then it's going to be where it needs to be. Like you kind of need to sacrifice certain things in order to get it to work. And so I feel like that's how a lot of it was, is that they had an idea and he had to bring them to reality and be like, this is how we can actually make this happen. So, yeah, I feel like his was one of my favorites. And I feel like
I missed that one. I'm bummed I missed that one.
And the funny thing was too, is like I came back to the shop today and I noticed that the 2 days I wasn't here, everyone in the shop like ravaged the shop snacks. Like they were like almost gone. And I opened the fridge because I needed a tea. And in the door on the fridge was a Renfro's salsa. And I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Like,
yeah, I mean, which is exactly what we have to do as printers sometimes. I mean, a customer comes to the front counter or they email or we're on the phone with them and they want certain things, but we have to steer them in the right direction. Sort of like what I guess Renfro does, like just to make sure that their expectations can be met and it's within their budget, you know? And so it's perfect overlap, isn't it? And so it's so great to hear people that aren't from like the screen printing industry. I thought it was great.
So a question for both of you guys, going back to Kevin Baumgart's thing. He was saying that every quote you send out should also have like a 5-minute call to review that quote over the phone with the person.
I have a lot to say about that. Yeah.
So that sounds great, but I doubt that's what's actually happening anywhere. So Andy, what are your thoughts there?
So I had this idea, and it was during the pandemic, or kind of coming out of the pandemic, and that was to build a virtual showroom where I just have a room. It's set up with a camera, and it has a spot where we can go where you can hear. And so what we would do is we would, instead of just sending it, because what we do mostly right now, 90-something% of what we do is just send an email with a quote in it, right? And we have no way to track like who actually converts and purchases from us. We don't have a system like a CRM system that will show us that. But this way, and I think he's right, because if we're bothering to send this quote and build this quote and send it to them, I think we're dropping the ball once we hit send. Because why isn't it that we do exactly what he said and say, look, how about like a 5-minute phone call just to go over this quote? Or even better, here's a Zoom link. I'm going to show you the Gildan 18500 and the Richardson 112, the non-existent Richardson 112 hat that you're wanting, so you can compare, or whatever. You can compare this Gildan 18500 to a Bella Canvas hoodie, and you can be standing there and you could show them both to them. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm just kind of go over it because I have people that sometimes we don't have to do that. Obviously, if they're a repeat customer, you can just send off the quote, the email, and that's all they need is a price. But other times, if they're a new customer, I think that going the extra mile and showing them they care enough to take time out of your day to either pick up the phone and call them to go over the quote and see if they have any questions, or do an actual Zoom call. Everybody's really familiar with Zoom. That's it. The pandemic changed the world. We have no problem jumping on a video call. Why don't we do it with quotes?
You know, I agree. One thing I've been trying to start doing and haven't quite gotten it going yet, but with Sound and Furies, I want to put in the customer notes. We obviously use Printavo, so when you send the quote in the customer notes, you can have hyperlinks. And I want to put in a little hyperlink, and they click into it, and it's like a 90-second Loom video of either myself or my partner Mike explaining how the quote's laid out, what the process is going to look like. So, hey, once you click the approval, deposit request is going to come through. Here's what's going to go through. Maybe even have like a quick walkthrough of like where it's going to go in the shop, and just give them that nice little like 90-second
like a flow.
Right. To kind of like help them like, oh, okay, this is what I can expect now. To kind of help break up some of those questions. And I thought that was a good idea. Then I'm thinking about it like, well, man, based off what Kevin's saying, and he's not wrong. If you're just like quote and hope, like it's not quite as efficient. And at the same time, having a shop where it's really my partner Mike there, that's really it. We got somebody that can kind of help in once in a while. I can help end of the night with some quotes, some things. But I don't know if he's got the time to commit to also doing a 5-10 minute Zoom with every single quote he has to push through. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to figure out what is the best middle ground, or is it better to say, okay, well, screw it. I mean, everyone has to have that, and we have to figure out a time crunch and rearrange how things are going to go. Maybe Saturdays become print days only, and Saturdays have to happen weekly. That's the hard part. Being a smaller shop, how can you actually implement something that's going to take up that much more time? So if you're doing, I mean, I guess it's like 10 quotes a day, right? That's still another 50, 60 minutes. If it only goes 5 minutes each time, which is probably not going to. So then it's another hour and a half in that day. That gets to be a little hard. Now, what it's like, I think in the context he was talking about it too, is more when you're like hiring for your first time, like an outbound salesperson, or somebody that you're kind of just paying to be a sales gig worker, essentially. That makes a lot more sense for me. Like having a customer service perspective, and like that's their only job is getting quotes and closing quotes. I think it's a lot harder for a lot of shops to actually live by that when they don't have a dedicated person just doing sales. That person is the owner, that person is the manager, that person is the right. So trying to figure out a way to like use that same idea of not doing quote and hope, and getting a little more. I'm not sure if that link, the Loom link in the customer notes when they open the quote is it, because they already have had to open the quote on their own, and I'm not there to like gauge their initial reaction, which, I mean, that would be helpful. Like if you're in poker, seeing their hand, you see the reaction, it helps tell you things. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on how to try to implement that idea for a shop that just doesn't have the bandwidth to do that?
Well, I feel like I've done both. Like when I had the button company and sold it and moved to Atlanta, and I was doing sales, like I was learning sales kind of as I went. Like I was figuring out my own way of doing things. And when I did the button stuff, I would never call anybody. Like I was always like sending MySpace messages or emails or whatever. And like, that's just how I wanted to communicate, because I felt weird calling people. And then when I went to Atlanta and I was doing sales there, I was dealing with a lot like bigger clients. And I felt like the best thing I could do was, and my boss at the time there came from a different sales background. Like he was more in like the kind of corporate sales thing, and then started doing the shirt stuff. And he taught me like, if you want to get it done, just pick up the phone and call somebody. And we would have months where I was trying to, like, the way we did was base versus commission, kind of like he was talking about in the thing. And I would get to the last week of the month and I'd be like, all right, well, I want to get my nut at the end of this month. So I need X amount of, $1,000 or something to hit that nut. That like 2 days before the end of that month, like I was on the phone almost all day, and I found out I could make so many more sales on the phone than I could if I was just sitting around waiting for somebody to reply. So like I would go through and you could see an invoice list, all these draft like invoices. And I would just call that person who had a draft and be like, hey, I just want to make sure you got your invoice. And you saw the mock-ups and everything else. And they're like, yeah, I got the email. I just haven't got around to doing it yet. And you're like, okay, well, do you have any questions? And they're like, well, actually, I was wondering about this thing. You walk them through it real quick. And you're like, well, I can take the payment over the phone now if you want. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's just do it now because that's easier for me. And then they do the payment and it's done. And I feel like I could just stack up so many more orders that way, because people get to a point, and this happens for everybody. It's the same thing of like going down a spiral on the internet late at night. Like they're in their bed at night on their phone or something, and they go down a spiral of doing something. They might be like, oh yeah, I'd like to order t-shirts. And then the next day after they sleep, they're like, yeah, I want to order shirts, but like, do I need them as bad as I thought I did last night? Kind of thing. You know what I mean? And they're just sitting on that invoice. And I feel like as soon as you call them, they're like, oh yeah, fuck, I should just do this now and get it done and over with. So here upstate, I kind of have always had the mentality of like, it's so much easier to just pick up the phone and call the customer and like ask them a question about the mock-up or get them to get the invoice done. But it's hard for me to teach the customer service people I have and sales people I have, because they're in the mindset of they don't want to pick up the phone and talk to people. They'd rather just send the email. And I always tell them, they come to me, they're like, well, there might be a color issue on something. And they're like, oh, I emailed the customer about it. I haven't heard back. And it was like, that was 2 days ago. I was like, what's their number? And then they give me the number and I call right then. They pick up. I'm like, hey, did you want brown or did you want tan? And they're like, tan. I'm like, okay, cool. Hang up the phone. And then I look at them and I'm like, I solved this in a minute. Like,
I mean, Steve Albini said that if the phone came out after text, it'd be the biggest thing ever. And Jacob from Jackprint said, I don't answer email. You call my phone, right? He doesn't even do the email thing. So I mean, both those. Yeah, you're definitely not wrong. The hard part, like you said, not everybody's great with that. Like my business partner, Mike, Mike, I love Mike.
Right.
When you get to know Mike, he's an awesome human and he'll talk your ear off. When it comes to sales, and this is nothing, he'll admit this too, he's still fresher to sales. I don't know if he's going to be able to pick up the phone every single time and like go call that person. So
I don't think he should be, because he's in production, and all of a sudden when he's all of a sudden you're pulling him away from, in production, I guess, essentially.
Right.
And so
going in like
us,
fifth gear to go to like third gear, just like that is
hard.
It's very hard.
You're in this zone of sales, and now you're in the zone of printing. They're completely different. And so for us, we have 4 inside sales people or inbound, so they essentially, they write all of most of our business here. And for me, I would rather have them take time out of their day to pick up the phone and call when they send out a quote, or do this Zoom call thing, so that we convert 100% or as close to 100% of our quotes as we can, and understand that that's costing us money because they're spending time doing that, and be okay with that. Because, look, if you could actually even hire somebody, and whatever that person costs, Matt, and they're going out, and let's say they are picking up the phone, or even going, Kevin even suggested going to their place and presenting and saying, hey, here are the shirts, here's the art, here's our quote. I mean, that stands out from other shops. And if you're trying to get that sale, that's big time. And so I think that person, whatever you're paying that person, and it could be a base plus commission, situation, whatever you're paying them, it's going to come back tenfold. And so I have no problem doing that. And I really loved that. That might even be like one of the biggest takeaways for me, is hearing that again and reminding me that that's a really important thing to do. So I don't know. I think that you're right. It's a struggle because a lot of shops don't have that person and they don't have that time. Our speed to quote is so fast that most people who we send our quotes to are like, wow, I can't believe you sent this so fast. Like sometimes like 10 minutes, we get a contact from our website, and they've already got a quote 10 minutes later, and they can't believe it because I think they're used to maybe even sometimes never getting a response back. And so really important things, speed to quote. And you can't be fast to quote if you're on a press finishing a job because they're coming to pick it up at 3:00 or FedEx, it has to ship out at 3:00.
Well,
and you push that quote off.
I think the thing is too, is like I said, like if they're in the moment of wanting to order shirts right then and there, and they send that email to ShirtCon, and ShirtCon gets back to them in 10 minutes, it's still fresh in their mind that they wanted to order shirts. But if they send a quote out and they don't hear back until the next day, then they're kind of like
buyer's remorse opportunity. Right.
They're like, oh, well, maybe I don't need shirts as bad as I thought.
And that's the hard part is we've got automations. Like, so if a quote request comes in, it triggers, it texts Mike, it texts me, one of us will jump to it. So, I mean, the poor guy's definitely having to get pulled from 5th gear to 3rd gear all day long, which that does wear on you too. So, I mean, we're pretty good about getting those quotes out pretty quickly in most instances. I think it's just the hard part is saying like, switch to only doing a Zoom call or a phone call right when you send it right then, and actually like talk to them. I feel, I mean, I wish that sounds great. I just don't think it's really feasible until we can hire a new employee, which is still my uphill battle of what has to happen for Sound and Fury this coming years. We have to get,
I think after I was talking about this right now, I'm going to add that to my sales meeting and talk to them about it, and maybe even see if I can get some kind of conversion thing to see how effective it is, to just be like, hey, let's try this for like a month of every time you send out a quote, just give them a follow-up call right then and there and say, hey, do you have any questions? I just wanted to let you know I sent your quote.
It's going to help without a doubt. I'd be curious to what that metric actually looks like too, but it's for sure going to help. I
think it's just going to be like pulling teeth to them, because it's one of those things, me as an owner coming to them and be like, hey, I want you to try this thing. They're going to be like, oh, fuck you. When you're not here, I'm not doing that shit. But I guess we'll see how it goes.
All right. I'm gonna talk to Mike. We're gonna also switch, I think, too.
What I want to see with Mike is I want to see him with like a Bluetooth thing in his ear all day. So while he's printing, he can be like, hey, Mike here.
His hair just slicked back. All of a sudden, he's wearing like a tie too, just on press.
Well, you know, as an incentive or a motivator to implement whatever you want, if you want them to call or you want them to do a Zoom or whatever it is, as an incentive, maybe it's for every quote that converts to a sale, that's $10 additional, like up and above whatever.
He's part owner, so I mean, it's there's no more incentive other than owning already. That's part of it too. If we had an extra body, that's
his incentive is more sales in and more money in his
right? Exactly.
True. But for you, Dylan, it would work, you know, and for here it would work. Like if they're resistant to saying, "Oh, I don't really want to call somebody," but if we,
do you guys do that with your inbound sales team? Do you do like every time you close something, you get a dollar amount, a fixed amount, or?
I think if they close sales that day, I'm willing to let them have lunch break.
He puts the slop bucket in the room in the trough. Right. They're allowed to eat with no hands.
Right. Exactly.
Well, they must have got a lot of sales when you were gone because all the stuff was gone.
Yeah, they just ate it. Yeah,
they just ate it. Good.
But you're willing to actually try that though, Andy? You'd even think about that if you switch to like giving them like $5-10 every time they close a quote.
Definitely.
Are they listening right now?
Probably not.
Okay, well then you're safe. Otherwise, they're all coming tomorrow. Like
the funny thing is I heard that a couple times this weekend, and I don't know. I haven't really put it into place here. Is a lot of like commissions on sales because everybody I have is, like I said, it's not really a sales team. They're literally just fielding emails all day. Like we're basically not at all like hunting for jobs. I literally just have people answering the normal stuff that comes in every single day. So they're
but I bet like their speed to get shit done would go up higher too with like
no, it would if I was like incentivized, right? But I'm just saying like I haven't done that, but I feel like John at Logo Daddy was talking about that quite a bit too. Of like, yeah, I do this like structure and whatever, and I was like, fuck, maybe I should try that. And then we heard about it in that talk about commission based stuff, and I just don't know how I would do it here because they're not out hunting for the things. They're just coming here. So who gets what job? And like, if it goes to your email, is that your commission now?
You should make them fight to the death for it. Battle Royale.
I think so
style.
too. Yeah.
I mean, it's your life and $10. What's
$10 is $10.
That's the best incentive ever. You get to live, right?
Right.
Squid Game up in here.
So how much more time do you have, Matt?
I mean, we have at my fam's got some dinner plans to get to, but we can. What do we want to chat about?
Well, we talked about like one of the talks at the entire Print Hustlers conference. So I didn't know if there was any other takeaways that you had.
I missed the first half of Ricardo because there was no seats right when we got in there, and so I was like, okay, I'm not technically a paying person, so I'm gonna not take a seat right now. So I kind of like was out to the back, and I caught the second half of Ricardo. It was very entertaining, a lot of high energy. I enjoyed that almost every single speaker, even the ones you didn't see it coming from, dropped at least one F-bomb. I don't know why, but the 4-year-old in me really enjoys that.
Right.
Steve
That's just because we're pieces of shit. Yeah.
Of course, that's exactly what it is. I mean, Steve Albini, I think was the biggest takeaway for me. I already said like kind of him and Jacob were the ones that I think were the most entertaining. Tom Raden was also amazing. Just listening to his whole design thing and just watching what he's done. I can't really relate because I don't have talent like he has. So that was kind of like, this is what talented people are like. Still awesome. For me, honestly, it was just kind of surreal in one essence. So I've been to all 5 print. Well, last year we were all there, right, remotely. But I've been to all 5 Print Hustlers conferences, and it's fun to think that the first year I went, I was selling supplies and consumables and equipment, and was in a room of like 25 people, like a WeWork. And then now on the 5th one, I'm senior success manager at Printavo. And I also made a side software that I was able to actually make money with and sponsor the Print Hustlers conference. So like for me, the biggest takeaway was that this industry is amazing. And the more I kind of focus in on it and work with good people, the more it continues to like pay itself forward in my career for me, and then help bring everybody else forward at the same time. So it was kind of like a big surreal, like, this is awesome. last year I would have been at the Print Hustlers Conference since it was virtual, didn't really hit the same, I guess, right? It's my first Print Hustlers Conference working for Printavo. And it's seeing that growth, and then also seeing behind the scenes, knowing how hard the team works to do all that stuff. Just cool seeing it come to light, you know?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, honestly. Like everyone we've talked to basically was like, we appreciate events like Print Hustlers and Long Beach and all this other stuff because we get motivated by seeing the equipment or hearing these people talk about their businesses and how successful they were in certain things or how unsuccessful they were makes us not feel alone and all this other stuff. And then we get our brain juices going all day at the conference. And then immediately after it's like, hey, fucking 700 people that are into the same industry as you, same mindset as you are going out and going to bars and just getting loose and talking to each other and talking about feelings and doing things we probably shouldn't and
talking about their childhood and weird things you don't want to hear about.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So, so I'm just saying we could start with that. Like me and you could have a weird, dark conversation about something and then immediately lead into talking about pre-press. You know what I mean? Like that's how it goes. We could laugh and joke about stuff and then we're like, okay, yeah, but like seriously, like what about this metric or something? And it's like, to me, that's what makes these events is you can say networking, but it's just like us going and talking to other people and the friendship of like, you know, get your core like group of dudes and girls that they're all trying to do the same shit as you. And it just motivates you to like do better as a company.
One thing that and not to like toot your horn because y'all have been tooted enough. But yeah, put your horn away. But you have brought faces to people that maybe I'd seen like stills on their Instagram or like seen their perspective of things, but very usual. It's not very common to have someone like turn the camera on themselves in our industry. There's a couple of the vain ones you see nothing but them, right? Like Andy. I'm just kidding. But for the most part, you don't really see them. So when they're guests on Shirt Show, it actually brings a lot more humanity to that Instagram handle. So when I see them in person, there's not really like oh, hey, hi, how are you? It's oh, what's up? And it's almost like you already know that person too. Yeah. So it's actually made the events even more fun because I already know all these people that we've probably never actually interacted, but because I've watched them for 1 to 3 hours, just talk nonsense with you guys. It's like, yeah, I know exactly who you are because I've basically hung out in the room with you listening to you talk for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So that also makes it a lot more fun. It also changes the dynamic from, like I said, I don't think it's networking anymore. I don't want to use the term like brotherhood because it doesn't sound inclusive, but like whatever
it is though, like it really is.
It should be. So I don't want to sound non-inclusive, like brotherhood and sisterhood, but brotherhood, right? Like it's anybody who goes in these places, even if they are like completely dressed differently, they're super bro-y, they're tribal tatted up, whatever. I'm still going to get along with them because they're amazing people. They're in the brotherhood. We know that we're doing the same thing, just some different style and aesthetic. We're all in the same exact boat. Literally at the end of the night on the same exact boat too, right? But together, kind of fighting this journey at all times, arm in arm, and that's
well, the funny thing is like you go to these other networking events or whatever. Say you're going to a chamber event or something. Everyone there is in a different industry, and you're trying to meet people, and you're like, "Fuck, I don't know what to talk to with this guy, and I don't know what to talk to about this guy." I feel like at events like this, you could literally walk up to, like, if you're new and don't know anybody, you can walk up to any group of people and just start talking because we're all talking about the same shit. And that's why, like, me and Andy
just walk in like, yep, right.
Me and Andy, 2 days in, both were looking at each other of like, I haven't stopped talking in fucking 2 days. Like, all we're doing is talking about the same topics, the same things to like just different people, which is amazing. And I'm glad we're doing it. But like after 48 hours of just constant conversation, I was like, I need to just sit in a room and stare at a wall for like an hour and a half before I go do this again.
Yeah. The drive home was really relaxing, not to think about anything and just drive in pretty much silence. I mean, JoJo felt the same way, so we just sort of drove home. And I
mean, you guys are celebrities. That's also part of it. Like you guys and Bruce and like Brett, like, yeah, you don't get a break. I don't have that problem. Luckily, I was able to.
Well, it was amazing too, because this was one of the bigger events that we've been to since like pandemic stuff and doing shirt show so much. And like, I would walk into a room or walk into an elevator and someone would be like, I listen to you every morning. And I'm like, hey, nice to meet you.
That's who jumped out of the bushes when you were walking back alone to your hotel.
I love it though. It's so awesome because it's the same thing. It's like you said, like if you go to ISS or Print Hustlers or whatever, it's like you do that once a year or whatever. I feel like for Shirt Show, for me and Andy, it's like we kind of get to do it on a smaller scale every Sunday. Like we get to have these conversations. So
before you go, Matt, I have some responses from, we asked, what are some takeaways? And I have a few. I'll read them. One of them is that I should have bought my tickets when I had a chance. Mm-hmm. Hanson says, don't drink tequila. Mm-hmm. One of the Christinas says, JoJo is the fucking best. I read that to JoJo and she laughed and loved it. Mm-hmm. The Coach Beard says, don't be afraid to say no and get the client to focus on the value of the asset as a whole. Kind of goes into what Dylan was saying about saying no. Bruce says, or whoever answered this from Printavo, maybe it's Luke, not sure, but he says, don't use the bus company. So yeah. You want to tell that story?
Yeah. So we were all set to take two different buses. They made sure before everybody got done, like, hey, a bus is going to leave at 4 and a bus is going to leave at 4:20. Make sure you don't miss the buses because at 4:45, the boat is leaving. It was a Chicago architecture tour boat with a bar on there. And at 4:30, no buses have shown up. And Bruce and Luke are on the phone calling. It turns out the first one's still stuck in traffic. And the first one had to go pick up, drop off, come back. So not going to make it. So Luke just kind of yells at the crowd, hey, you can Uber. Here's the address. We're walking. So it's like a 1.5 mile walk. And the crew gets split up by a big light. And we lose the 3 people in those bright orange hoodies. We're like, whoa, they're gone. No one's phones are working because you're right along the river and all the giant skyscrapers, and Verizon's just the worst. So no one's maps are really working. I kind of end up with a pot of people. I've got the machine gun graphics folks with me and some other people, and they start us. But then we split up again because I chase one group who turned out to actually be the correct group. They went ahead on their own and they found it the quickest. So they went one way. Y'all went another way, and I was like, I don't know where to go. And then me and the machine gun graphics folks end up going a totally different way, crossing the river to the wrong side, and then having to literally run back across and then get down there while the boat's waiting for the last, we're about to launch. I'm like, no, and come running in and was covered in sweat and caught my breath for the next 25 minutes.
Well, the best part was again, because of how much stuff we were doing, I took a nap, and I told Andy, I was like, I'm going to take a nap. I'll be down for the boat thing. And I set an alarm, woke up. Andy texted me, where are you? And I said, what time's the boat thing? He's like, now. And I was like, oh, okay. So I sat up in bed, put my shoes on, walked downstairs, and then just a sea of people started walking. And I was like, where are we going? Does anybody know what's happening? And everyone's like, I don't know. I'm following the guy in front of me. And I asked that person, where are we going? They're like, I don't know. I'm following that guy. I was like, we're just a crowd of people aimlessly following people. I was like,
you know what though?
Charge here.
I liked it. I think it turned out honestly for the better because the weather was nice and we all went through a stroll through the streets of Chicago.
We got I thought it was great. We got a tour of the smells of Chicago is what it really was.
Yeah. There's a little truth to that too.
It was a little stinky, but it was gorgeous out. Today is cold and disgusting, so y'all lucked out a lot. It's been raining all day. But yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. And then
it was
that was on the Arctic Tour where I had to break the news to Amy that yes, Chicago's on Lake Michigan. So the more you know. Then we got to go have some awesome tacos afterwards. So that
we did.
Went to dinner. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I ousted myself into the Andy family dinner. But it worked well.
Yeah, I think all in all, I had an amazing weekend. I always get inspired going to these things and try to change things in my business. And I'm going to add 4 or 5 notes to my board of stuff that we're going to all talk about and try to implement and do different things. And yeah, I mean, it's good. I super appreciate Brett and Bruce and everyone involved in setting the whole thing up. And I can't wait to do it again next year.
Same. My other takeaway was that like 3 people told me I'm the junior version of you. So I think we can that I'm the cheap knockoff Pokemon version, or the
that's what we said is what did we say? Bulbasaur?
Yeah.
I don't know jack shit about Pokemon. I imagine Bulbasaur is the fat one. But I was and I don't even know how this works out, but you were like the one before the holographic.
Right. So you're the high end Pokemon card, and I'm just the
one that's worth like $5.
Standard level de-evolved version of Dylan. So at some point I'll find my full form and I'll be Dylan.
Check this out. I have something to share. Look, this is Joanne's. She brought this book. All right. Brand new. This is her thing. And these are her notes. And like on the green, it says Ricardo. So there's Ricardo. This is what I have from the whole thing. This is fantastic. Check this out.
So she took notes while you just spaced out.
This says,
nice.
Right. This is everybody. And it goes on and on.
So you can scan those and send them to everybody else in the class. So perfect.
Yeah, and there's doodles.
Thanks, JoJo.
Good doodles in there.
Do you know, Matt, are they putting a lot of this online as far as the talks?
I believe everything is recorded and will be put online. Yes.
Okay. Because there's a couple that I would like to go back through. And there was one I obviously took a nap because I really wanted to hear Jack Prince. I saw him talk at ThreadX, but he was one of the shops that when I very, very first started inspired me to want to have the shop that I have. So I really wanted to see him speak again. And then, but I was like taking really long blinks while I was listening to him. And I was like, I have to go take a nap. So I missed like 2 or 3 after him.
Matt, do you have a few more minutes?
Sure.
You good still? Okay. Because Logo Daddy John is here and he has a story to share about Ricardo, the first speaker, which you missed, which I think you might like. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring him in.
Is he always popping in?
Yeah, I was just going to do a phone call, but no, he's ready. I think he just like pulled in his driveway too.
Oh,
and
seriously?
Jumped out of his car and he's ready to go. Yeah.
Look at that handsome.
What's up, dude? What's up, boys? How are you?
Good. How are you? You just made it back?
I walked in the door and ran down to my wife's office to jump on the call with y'all.
Hell yeah.
I'm like 3 hours of sleep, man. It's rough.
Yeah. We're all in the same boat, I feel like.
Worth it.
Yeah.
So
you had a story?
Yeah. I mean, man, it was crazy. We on one of the breaks, Ricardo, so I just kind of walked out in the hall and Ricardo Crespo's story was just pretty awesome. He's a pretty awesome guy. So I walk out in the hall and I saw him and he was talking a lot about, they did a lot of branding and stuff for Nike. And so I was like, I started talking to him about budget and stuff and just different things and told him that we do a lot of branding in our business as well as screen print. And so we kind of just start diving into that. And then he starts asking about us and he goes, hey, what do you think? He said, is there anything that I could do to maybe help out your business? I'm like, wow. I'm like, wow. So I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'd be honest. I would love to have you talk to my design team. And he goes, literally just throws it right out. He's like, I'll do better than that. He goes, you fly me in. And he goes, I'll spend a day with your entire staff, your design team, everyone. And he goes, I'll tell my story. I'll just talk with them. He goes, I just want to give some things back and do some nice things for some people. And he goes, I really love your story. We've been talking. And he goes, he just basically threw that out there for me to fly him in. He goes, if you don't take advantage of it, that's on you. I said, I'm taking advantage of it. So I've already reached out. We're already setting it up and can't wait to have him come in.
That's awesome. That's super cool.
Pretty epic.
That's super rad.
Yeah. He's
I should have gotten him first.
and yeah, no, right? Yeah. Sorry, everybody else. I'm taking that one as quick as
He actually
possible.
said, I don't know if you saw,
So-
did you catch the end of that where he said
Free
he
hour to
offered
anybody.
1 hour, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
To everybody in that room. Yep.
Listen, when you start like unfolding the layers of that guy, I mean, it just doesn't get any bigger than that, you know, in that world. So I'm super stoked about it. My wife, when we left that, we quickly talked. My wife was in tears as she walked to she had to go like wipe away her tears. She's a crier, but it was pretty awesome meeting. And he's a pretty awesome guy. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think his
So what y'all been talking about?
You.
The whole time.
We're just talking about how handsome you are the entire time.
It's extremely handsome. It's mostly Dylan and I saying that we're jealous, and
Right.
someday we'll be there.
I appreciate that, guys.
I wish I could have more spicy meatballs is what I was saying.
Yeah, I know, right? That was epic too, as well. Second favorite memory, spicy meatballs.
The funny thing about that, and I'm going to talk about it, is Frank wanted to take me and Andy, and John came along to dinner, and Frank was totally fully intended on like paying for dinner and taking care of us and everything else. And Andy pulls his card out and pays for dinner. I look over at Frank, and Frank is legit pissed off.
He was.
I heard about it the next day, so I know that he was pissed.
Apparently, a Chicago thing is if you intend to pay for dinner and somebody else does, then you've got beef.
Actually, you're supposed to be shot in the head right there. So
you're in.
I'm surprised you
You've
made it out
insulted
alive.
him.
It's
The funny thing was,
Chicago rules, man. Chicago rules.
I was in between them, and I look over at Frank, and he's just like shaking his head in disgust. And Andy's paying, and then Frank's like, "No, Andy, for real." I'm like actually pissed off, and I'm just like Frank's gonna punch through me to Andy.
Yeah.
And then Andy baller turns and looks at Frank, and he's like, "You're just gonna have to be pissed off at me then." And I was like, "Oh, Dad's mad now."
The thing is he invited us to steak, and that place. We couldn't get reservations. That's what it was. And so we couldn't go where Frank wanted to go. And I said, don't worry about it. Let's rain check that thing. And then I had reservations, or I got reservations at this place. And so I felt like I got those reservations. I should pay for it. And so it it
made sense. No, you were a great person for doing it. It was just one of those moments of the weekend to me where I was like, I don't want to be in the middle.
Still feel like Frank with all those screens and all that welding, he's totally got like a mech warrior thing he can like get into and come beat you. It's a giant screen mech Frank just coming at you.
Frank's a good sized man. I don't think I want to piss him off.
Yeah, I had a really great time hanging out with Frank. He's such a good dude.
He is a great dude. The Frank buttons are genius good. Also.
Well, John, we got you on here. What was your biggest takeaway from the weekend other than Ricardo?
Just a lot of the speakers were great. I mean, Josh Merrill with Liquid Graphics. I mean, wow. You know, when you hear these guys' stories and you're like, I'm running a shop with like 15 to 20 employees, and I'm thinking I'm pulling my hair out and chasing my tail some days. And then you hear him say, well, right now we have around 400, and we're, and I'm just thinking 400 people. Like,
yeah. And in fact, I want to say he said he was hiring, or he had spots for 87. Did you hear that part?
Yeah, he said he was trying to hire, and he would hire 15 of the 100 and then lose 15 and have to hire another. He'd be back at square one or something.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's insane.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I think the biggest thing with him, though, too, that was inspiring was he wasn't a printer. He was a sales guy, but he knew what he wanted. Like that was his biggest thing. Is he's like, I know what I want. I'm not compromising on anything. And if you're not going to give it to me, then I'm going to start my own shop. And this is what I'm going to do. And then that's what he's done. And I think the craziest thing about his story is that he's not contract. Like he's direct to customer. And he's just like delivering on everything. He's like, nope, this is the quality it's going to be. This is when it's going to be here. And he's hitting those marks. And that's why his shop is what it is because he's just very driven to do what he said he was going to do. He's a man of his word.
Yeah. impressive guy for sure.
Yeah, too much stress for me.
Yeah, I didn't get to meet him, but I would have, I would have liked to shake his hand, and hopefully some of that magic comes to where I can control
Suck some of his soul out.
things that well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Andy, any closing
that was
statements
good.
or?
I just want to thank the Printavo team, Bruce, everybody who put this event on. Brett, I mean, what an MC. That guy's a
was
G for
amazing.
sure. And
Yeah.
He's good. Yeah.
that's hard,
amazing.
isn't it? That's like a really tough job to
He
introduce
always
guests.
makes it look so easy, though. He's just such a chill, charismatic human. He's consummate MC, and he's great at it.
And what about his adorable son walking around the entire time?
The damn cutest. Like, you hear a little baby giggle, and you're like, oh, there it is.
How is he
Dylan,
so
Dylan or the
chill?
baby giggling. It's one of the two.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one thing we didn't touch on, and I feel like it was a big topic that we were talking about, was the Bella Canvas guy.
Oh yeah. I was getting ready. So I had 3 notes written down, and he was my third, because man, how impressive is, like, again, those guys blow me away, because, like, I don't know, they're just so kind of high level. He was like, I mean, he can anything. You could never be mad or anything at that guy. Like, you can call up and be pissed off about supply chain, and he'll talk to you for like 5 minutes, and you go, hey, is there anything I can do to help? You know, he's like,
He impressed me too. Like, I
so
thought
incredible to me, those guys.
my takeaway from Chris was one, how do I be confident like that?
Yes.
That's just so so inspiring anyway. It makes me want to be better and more confident.
Eloquent, just like everything was
Eloquent
so
too, yeah.
delivered so well.
His resume, when they were reading it, I think it was Bruce that was interviewing him. It just went on and on and on, right?
Yeah, it's like Harvard, Yale, everything, you know.
Yeah. But one of the things that he said about Bella Canvas that made me kind of get excited was that, because for us anyway, you've been hearing like, oh, the end of the supply chain thing, the end of the t-shirt madness and all these shortages is this date. And then it pushes out to another date. And then you're thinking like, is this the new normal? Will it ever correct? But what he had to say really made me comfortable to think that there is the light at the end of the tunnel. And what they said was that they have the largest cutting facility in the world in LA, and they are implementing or opening a new mirror image facility. In Montgomery, Alabama, which will be they'll have the 2 largest cutting facilities in the world. And that he thought anyway, their forecast is that they're going to be caught up in mid-April 2022. Yeah. Which really isn't that far when you think about it.
No, that's not far at all. We can survive till then. If it gets better then.
Right. If it goes back a lot longer than that, we're all going to be in trouble.
I know, right? So yeah, he was really an impressive guy. And like you said, cool, calm, and collected. I mean, I don't know if there's somebody you want to be, it's a guy like him, it's like he can handle it.
I think I'm missing a few degrees. I'll work on it. Harvard, here we go.
We don't need it.
Yeah, right. I know.
Figure it out.
I'm missing all the degrees.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks, John, for hopping on and talking with us. We really wanted to do an episode today. We all feel like trash, I'm sure. But we pulled it through, and we just needed to do a brain dump of this weekend.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, we're running on fumes, and we are all going to drive straight home and go to bed.
I was happy to see y'all in my city. I hope to see you again before next Print Hustlers, but if not, definitely at the next Print Hustlers.
I'll be there to do some awful things with you. So
I'm in. We can feed each other weird things and wherever else the night takes us.
Right, exactly. All right,
Andy, we'll go somewhere else.
Don't lie, you'll watch.
Right. He's like, oh, what are you guys doing over there?
All right, guys, have a good night.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.